Hello, I'm Sharon Humphries and I take some of the modules on our MSc Environmental Health. Now, we've been doing this for over 2 years now. We're on our third intake for this programme. And I've built up some experiences over the years about distance learning, because this is our first fully distance learning environmental health programme at UWE. And in fact, it's the only second distance learning programme in the whole of the UK. So we're a bit of a trailblazer here. Essentially, environmental health is a very practical subject. So initially, there may be some thoughts of how can you possibly put a very practice-based subject online? And it was a challenge, but we think we've managed to do that. So my students are generally mature students. They're usually career changers. And looking for a new challenge in their learning. Over the years, we've built up numbers. We started with a very small number, 4 or 5. The last intake was 22, which has brought its own challenges, which I'll talk about in a moment. So how I use it, principally in 2 ways. I use it to check learning throughout the module. We have some evening sessions using the Collaborate virtual rooms, and in a very early module I use it as part of the assessment. So I'll talk about each of those ways now. I have to say, when I began doing this, it was quite daunting to be able to do a fully online programme, but I have to say, more and more you try it, the more and more expertise you build up and more confidence you actually build up as you go along. So if we start with the Collaborate sessions, so what we do is for every module we have about 3 Collaborate sessions in the evenings to fit around work. Usually 6:30, 7:30, something like that, run for about an hour or as long as the students want. So typically I would have a session in the first week of a module, one in the middle and another one at the end. So that the one at the first week, typically what I would do is I would talk through the contents of the module handbook, just to make sure that the students know exactly what's expected of them in this particular module. The second one in the middle is to check that they're learning and they're okay. And then the final one typically deals with assessments, because that's usually when they're getting bothered about those and what they need to do. So that's usually it. Attendance varies. The more you have attending at any one time, the more difficult it gets to manage it. Typically, I probably get around half of the cohort attending on an evening session at any one time. Sometimes, you know, students are there, but you never see or hear them. They're there in numbers, but they don't actually engage. Whereas others will actually talk to you, and we can have a real conversation if they've got particular questions. We don't really have any protocol about putting hands up or whatever. Students seem to learn that as they go along. But you know, if you do have larger numbers, it might be a useful thing to think about having a protocol so that communication works easily. So those sessions tend to be questions and answers, and I usually talk for about 30 minutes on the introduction or the assessments or the sessions that they've done and the key points to pick out. And most of them tend to be me talking rather than the students, it has to be said. So it is useful to have something prepared in advance, because you can't rely on students being interactive. You do need something planned or some exercise planned to do that if you're running these sort of evening sessions. The other way that we use Blackboard is that we use them for assessments early on. So I have one module called Environmental Health, Risk and Law, and it's one of the first modules that we do. And what we're trying to do in that module, as well as the learning, is to get the students together in a learning community, try and get them to interact and to know each other. And that indeed is one of the outcomes of this particular module. So my experience with that is that it can be tricky, and all the issues that you get with group working face to face, you will have online. So my assessment needs the students to actually organise themselves into groups of about 4 or 5, and then work together on presenting a PowerPoint. They have to develop a PowerPoint on a particular topic, and then on the appointed assessment day, they have to deliver it real time to myself and another lecturer. Main issues that I've had is actually getting the students to organise themselves in groups. I thought it would be easy, but in practice it has led to a lot of issues, a lot of problems, people feeling left out, people not joining in, people not belonging, people have sometimes even disagreements on which group they're in. So it can take a lot of intervention from myself to actually try and organise them. And I have found that tricky. It can take a long time to sort them out. Other issues I've had are complaints about students saying a certain member of the group's not interacting, they're not turning up to their sessions to practice, and you can tell some groups have thrown it together at the very last moment because they've not actually had practices together online. And they have 12 weeks to do this, you know, so it's ample time. But the way things happen, sometimes it does tend to be a last minute approach, and you can see that. I do provide a practice room for students to go into to practice their presentations, to discuss what they want to do in advance. Some use that, a lot don't. And what we're trying to get them to develop is a seamless PowerPoint presentation where they all contribute to it, and they all have an equal part to play, both talking and preparation. And they are marked on that. Now the marks they get for that, they get 1 group mark, unless they agree that they want to be marked individually. Usually my experience is they're all willing to have a group mark. We have had a couple of instances where there have been disagreements and they have asked for individual marks, so we've provided that as well. In reflection on that, I think I am going to change that in the future and actually give them a mark for management of how they interact and how they manage their PowerPoint presentation, maybe 5% for that, to demonstrate how they've done that. And I think that might help, but we'll see. You do learn as you go along with that. And it's actually been that process that I found the most tricky to deal with on the distance learning, is to try and get students together in a community, talking to each other and to work together in a team. It is essential, but it does take quite a lot of intervention from myself to organise them and deal with questions and trying to connect them together. So in essence, that's how we do it. Our programme is proving to be successful, and as I said, numbers are increasing. Typically they are all UK based students, although it is open globally. We've had 1 international student so far, so I haven't had to deal with the time zone issue. But you know, in the future that might be a possibility. So I think probably that's the key learning points for me so far, and what I've had to deal with. And I have to say, the more you deal with it, the more confident you become. It is quite a daunting thing to begin with, to actually sit in a room on your own trying to manage a group of students that you never see. I find that quite daunting, but I'm getting to the stage now where I do feel more confident in being able to do that and tackle the issues that might arise. So it is beginning to work for me, but it has taken a while to get used to it and to embed it, and I'm sure it'll be the same for you.